Welcome to Grieving Insomniacs. I am your host, Christy Haberman. I am glad you're here. Thanks for being a part of our community. A few disclaimers before we get started. I am a licensed therapist. However, this podcast is not to be considered mental health therapy or counseling. It is for entertainment purposes only and is not associated with my counseling practice, Christy Haberman Counseling Services. Thanks for showing up. Welcome to Grieving Insomniacs, episode 10. So today is Mother's Day. I thought that this year would be different. I don't know why I keep thinking this year after year that this year it'll be better, this year it'll be better. And it's not. I mean, it is, but it isn't. So I woke up this morning and I tend to express my emotions physically. So I woke up this morning not feeling very good. And I've been extremely tired all day, which I find really interesting because it's been a while since this has happened to me. And I have no motivation to do anything. And it's like, even though my mind has made peace with the fact that my son died, it's like my body isn't. And it's like yesterday, it was our first 80-degree day here in South Dakota. So I was working outside, and I've talked about my music before and how if I hear certain songs, I believe that they're from Christopher. And so yesterday, one of my most important ones, Adele, Rolling in the Deep, played. To me, that's always a sign that Christopher is around. So I know he was around on Mother's Day. Unfortunately, the song my mom, that reminds me of my mom, played also, which is Crystal Bowersock's. Can't remember the name of the song. So they were both around yesterday. And it doesn't seem to have helped because I'm still anticipating him calling, anticipating him coming over and just missing him. And I think there's a little bit of the empty nest syndrome too. Because on Mother's Day, I think that's when you really miss your kids being little. So those of you with grown children, I'd like to hear from you if that's the case for you too, is if you miss your kids more on Mother's Day or you miss them being young. I know I do. I know I've been more irritable and much more, I hate to say space cadet, but much more inside my head and not very talkative. But that's just what happens with grief. I just don't know why I'm surprised by it. I'm just really, really surprised by it. And I shouldn't be. So one of the things that I wanted to talk about today was the use of ritual in grief. So as I have talked before, in my family history, I had never experienced the death of anyone close to me, traumatic or otherwise. My grandfather died when I was 28, I think, 27, 28. I wasn't very close to him, and my family wasn't very close to him. I mean, my dad was, but nobody else really was. And so he's the only one that had died. And then my grandmother died, same thing. I don't have a close extended family. We'd always been kind of separated. I've talked a little bit about my mom. She was, let's say, not very close to her family for various reasons. She was mentally ill, actually. And that kept her separated from her family, and it kept us separated from having close family friends and those kind of things. And so never really been around some someone that had died. So I was not aware of how to plan a funeral. I wasn't aware of how to write an obituary. Those are important rituals. And that's what we're talking about today, is the use of rituals in grief. And I don't have a strong cultural background either, as far as, I said before, my family's not very religious. A lot of funerals surround religious rituals. I just didn't have that background. I had nothing. But what I did have was exposure to the Lakota culture. So that's how I planned my son's funeral, was according to the Lakota culture. And in the Lakota culture, once someone dies, the body is never left alone. So the family sits outside the hospital, sits outside they caravan the body back to where they live. And someone's always with the body. Well, I wasn't able to do that in where I am, except I did want to have an all-night wake. I know that traditionally in society we have, a viewing of the body for an hour or two and then everybody goes home. But I didn't want that. And so I decided that I wanted to have an all-night wake before the night of the funeral. And so I did. We had a viewing. So I think it started on Sunday. And I don't remember what time, but I know it was early afternoon. See how your memory, like in grief, you just kind of lose it when it comes to these things? Anyway, so we stayed with the people, came and went all afternoon at the wake. And I stayed there with him. And then evening time came. So I pulled up my chair next to the coffin and sat there with him all night. And as I was going to sleep, I felt someone playing with my hair. And I just knew that it was him. It's a very special memory. I know there's some people that say, oh, that's not possible. That's not possible. But if that's the last contact you have with the person that you loved, it's absolutely 100% possible. So then we have the funeral, and that's the end of the burying ritual. But I found as I was moving through my grief, I needed more. And so I was doing some research on the use of ritual. So rituals help us focus. They help us deal with anxiety, and they help us feel more confident about situations that feel uncertain. And that is very much the case for me, is that I found I needed an outlet for my grief. I needed to express it, to have it be heard, so to speak, even if no one was listening. So I started writing in a journal, started documenting things that I felt were significant. My dreams about Christopher, times when I thought he was around me. And I also created a memorial Facebook. And I believed, and I still believe because I choose to believe, that he has the ability to hear and see and communicate with me through those things. And especially in the beginning, I used my Facebook a lot. And so I would post on the holidays. I would post music there, especially when I was missing him. I would post my music there. So then I created a playlist that would help me feel closer to him. And so they'd all be these songs that I felt like would help communicate with him. So ritual is also used for when we are facing situations where the outcome is important. In our case, grief. And it's a means to communicate our grief. So if you think about the rituals that you participate in, some non-religious ones are college graduation, high school graduation, receptions, parties, birthday parties are rituals, anything that's done with intention. But the difference between using ritual for grief and using those other rituals is that in grief, you can use it as a means to communicate not only with the spiritual side of grief, with your higher power, but you can use it to communicate with your loved ones. And it's a way for that expression of grief to be felt towards the other person. I've seen people use art. I've seen people do like I do and write journals. My book that I wrote was a lot about coming up with a ritual. It was my way of communicating my grief. So if you want to create a ritual, so I also have rituals for his birthday. And for me, like the whole process from the beginning to the end is part of the ritual. So I clean my house, start on the day of his birthday because I know I have company coming. But that's part of my ritual. So I listen to Christopher music, I clean my house with the expectation that not only is he going to come visit me, but my friend and her family are going to come visit me. Cooking the food is part of my ritual. So all the love that I feel for my son goes into cooking the food. I bake the cheesecake. I make cheesecake every year. I make spaghetti for him every year. And I bake the cheesecake from scratch because that is me communicating my love to him through the food. So my friend comes over. We create the spirit plate. We eat the food. And then we go to the ceremony or to the cemetery. And at the cemetery, we put down the spirit plate so that he can have something to eat. And we just sit there for a while. I take tons of pictures. And then we go home. And that's my ritual for the day of his birth. So the day he died is a little bit different. The day that he died, my ritual is I don't go to work. I am not going to work. Not going to work that day. Never going to work June 19th ever again for the rest of my life. Because I spend that day in mourning. In different years, it means different things. Some years it means I just want to spend the day alone. I just need to be alone with me and my feelings and my sadness. And that's what I need. Other times it means not being alone and spending time with my best friend. Or on the weekends is spending time with my husband. But either way, it's the ritual that helps me survive. So I would encourage you to create your own rituals, and they can have any kind of meaning that you want. Some people have a memorial corner where they have pictures of their loved ones, decorations of their loved ones, things to memorialize them, to make them believe that this is where I can look to grieve, to express my mourning. And I believe in grief that it's really, really important for people to do that. That the worst thing that you can do is to shove it deep, deep down, and just leave it there, because it will fester and it'll create a wound. I mean, that's all that depression is. Depression is a wound. It's a soul wound. It's all your unexpressed emotions that you haven't. And grief, it's critical that you find ways to express it. And unfortunately, because of the society we live in, most of this is done in solitary. We live in a society where we don't have patience for other people. We barely have patience for ourselves. We have people that don't have the ability to communicate or sit with someone in grief. They want you to hurry, get over it, fast, get over it. And therapists are like that. Doctors are like that. Well, why aren't you over it yet? Well, let me see. How can I explain to you? So some people don't have the words to express their grief. That's why it's important to use ritual. Some people could draw pictures. If you're a really good artist, that's a great way to do it. Some people create wonderful poetry. The type of ritual doesn't matter. What matters is that it's an expression of your grief, an expression of how you want to communicate your grief. And it's not communicating to other people, so don't misunderstand me. It's not communicating to other people. But part of the problem with grief, I feel like, is I don't feel like there's like a path or a road through it. We have to create it. And that means some kind of action on our part. And sometimes we get stuck in our heads. It's like the hamster on the wheel, and it goes round and round and round and round. And we get stuck. And we don't know how to get off the wheel. So ritual, as a means to communicate your grief, will help you off the wheel. It will help you find a way to the other side. And I don't even know what the other side looks like, to be honest with you. I'm still sad. I started to have a panic attack this week, and I had to stomp it down real hard because I couldn't think too much about it, because I realized it's going to be 11 years in June. And I started to panic because I don't know where he is. I don't know what he's doing or what his spiritual life is like. And that is so scary to me. And then I start to have that panicky feeling of, I don't know where my child's at. And for me, that's when it gets hard. I'm like, I can't think about that. I can't think about that. I can't think about what I don't know. And I can't speculate about what I can't know. And I think that's the hardest part. And so as I start to do the deep down spiral into my grief, because it's that time of year, and I'm sure you guys all understand, because you all have death anniversaries and birth anniversaries and all the other anniversaries that come along with losing someone, that you understand how I feel. It's just like a weight pressing down on you. And the worst part about it is I want to escape it. I want to escape it so bad. And there's no escaping it. And I think that's the thing that people don't understand. When they say, oh, why don't you get over it? If we could, we would. I know I would. Because getting over it doesn't mean loving my son any less. It means giving myself a break. I don't know that it's possible. I just don't. So back to the use of rituals. So create your rituals in any way. Just remember to do them with intent. That everything that you're trying to communicate to your loved one, or what you haven't been able to communicate to your loved one, is represented in your actions. That you do it with love and you do it with intention, and it becomes spiritual in nature. So on that day, on the death day and the birthday, I don't watch TV. I don't bring anything into my space that's going to be negative in any way, shape, or form. Because that's just how it is. I also don't work on my son's birthday. Luckily, I work somewhere that I've been able to do that without too many questions being asked. If I did, I would just call in sick because I'm no good to anyone that day. I'm just not. I'm not up to communicating. I haven't created a ritual for Mother's Day. Don't really know why I haven't. I just know I haven't. Maybe because it's so unpredictable. Because I'm not sure how I'd celebrate it. Because I just really want Christopher to be here. And he's not. And that is sad. So very, very sad. So leave me a message and let me know, what are some of the rituals you engage in that help memorialize your children that you have lost? What are some of the things that you have done? One of the things that I would like to do is Christopher wanted to travel. He wanted to be a travel nurse. He was a NICU nurse. He wanted to be a travel nurse, and he never got the opportunity to do that. That's one of the things that I want to do before I die, is I want to travel to all of the places that he couldn't travel and create those memories for him and do all of the things that he didn't experience, that I can experience for him so that he can go along with me. It's on my bucket list. One of these days, when I get close to retirement, that's what I will do. So I want you all to know I'm thinking of you today. Thinking of you on Mother's Day. I hope that you were kind to yourselves. I hope that you took care of yourselves and engaged in some self-care. Let me know. Leave me a message and let me know what some of your rituals are. What have you done? What have you found helpful? Because we're here to develop a community where we help each other. And there might be something that you haven't thought of, that I've thought of, or you can give me ideas of things that you have done that I haven't thought of. Thank you for listening. Have a great week, and I'll see you next Sunday.